All right, today we have a 2006 Hyundai Sonata with the 3.3 V6 motor. We are going to be replacing the AC compressor. Our customer actually had it checked out at a different shop, and apparently the Freon, or the refrigerant, is leaking out really fast from the AC compressor. The car was brought to us. The system was already empty upon hooking it up. You can see there's no refrigerant in there at all. It must have all leaked out, so we don't even have to evacuate the system. So we can just get right into pulling the AC compressor out. And so the first thing we're going to do is lift it up in the air and access it from underneath. So we'll see you back there in a second. Okay, so we're underneath the car, and what we're going to do now is drop the this splash shield here. It's got this little plastic retaining clip, has a little Phillips head. You just really lightly unscrew that, and this will come out. And then it'll just pull out like that. And then just some standard 10mm bolts that I'll take out real quick. Okay, so what you're looking at now, we're actually inside the passenger side wheel well underneath the car still. This is the belt system. We got to pull the belt off. The belt tensioner has a bolt or a hex head, which is where you can see my ratchet is on. So we're going to go ahead, and when we pull down on this, you'll see the tensioner start to move, and then the tension in the belt goes away. So what I did first is I actually drew a belt diagram just for my own reference, so that if the belt comes off completely, off all the pulleys, we'll know how to put it back on. But I'm just going to pull this off and try to pull it off just of the AC compressor, since that's all we're working with. There we go, just like so. Now, I'm going to kind of tuck the belt there and hope it stays in place while we do the rest of the job. So next we just have to start unbolting our compressor. Before we start taking off the compressor, I'm going to go ahead and pull off this one other splash shield here. It's just held up by some more 10mm bolts, and somebody put some zip ties on there too. So we'll just take all that off. It'll just give us a little bit more room to access the compressor. All right, so now you're looking up at the AC compressor. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the two lines. This first one, I'm going to use a 10mm wrench just to break loose the nut, and then just unthread the nut the rest of the way by hand here. Okay, so we got that nut off. This line should just pop right out now. There we go. There we go. All right, so one line's out of there. Now the other one, I should be able to get a deep 10mm socket on. Maybe. Okay, now we can pull off our other line here. And kind of tuck it out of the way a little bit. All right, so we're going to disconnect the electrical connector. Inside this little sheathing is a thing that you depress, and then the connector unplugs. So we'll just let that hang. And at this point, the compressor is completely disconnected from the car, other than the bolts that hold it to the motor. So there are 4 12mm bolts. We'll go ahead and take those out. All right, these last two bolts we're gonna have to leave in the compressor, because you can see with the frame there's no way to get the bolt all the way out. So we'll just leave them in there. And when we go to put the new compressor in, we just gotta make sure those are in the compressor before we actually put it up into the car. All right, so the compressor should be fully unbolted. I should be able to just drop it out of the car now by wiggling it a little bit. There we go. And we'll have to twist it and kind of angle it, but eventually it'll come out here. There we go. All right, so here's our old leaky compressor. So we'll go ahead and get our new one unboxed and lined up and everything. So we'll meet you over there. Okay, here you can see our brand new compressor next to the old one. Now, one thing you want to double check before you install it is whether or not your new compressor comes with the refrigerant oil in it already. Our particular one is already filled with the refrigerant oil, so we don't have to add any additional. If it comes empty, it'll usually give you some instructions telling you, you know, how to add it to the compressor. But ours, we can just go ahead and bolt right in. I'm going to leave these caps on. These are the caps that just cover the line holes. I'll leave those on until we get it bolted up in the car, just to keep dirt and stuff from getting in there. And I'm going to go ahead and swap over our bolts so we don't forget those. And other than that, we are ready to put it up in the car. All right, so next is a very important step. What we're going to do is flush the AC system. The AC compressor is out, of course, so you can flush the entire remaining system here from the two hoses coming from the compressor. Since we have good access to them, we're just going to do it right here. I've got a, now there's various ways of doing it. We have this pressurized flush bottle that's actually filled with flushing solvent made specifically for AC flushes, or you can buy an aerosol can that you just spray in there, and afterwards you follow it up with just regular air pressure to blast it all out. This thing kind of does it all in one shot, so it's a handy tool to have if you do a lot of AC repairs. So what we're going to do is just put our nozzle up to the line here, and very carefully just start blasting in the flush solvent here. And it might take a little while, but eventually we'll start getting the solvent will make it all the way through the system and start coming out of that high side port there. Safety glasses are important on this too. There it goes. All right, there we go. Now we're getting some out. Just took a little while to get it pushing through. Wow, that's pretty gross. And my catch bucket is not really catching anything, but you can see all the stuff coming out of there. Now we're just going to do this a few times and just keep doing this until that comes out clear out of the system. So we'll go ahead and cut. We're just going to keep flushing now, and we'll see you back when we're ready to put the compressor in. Okay, so we had a little trouble getting all the flush solvent out. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the expansion valve because we're going to be replacing that anyway. Now, unfortunately, on this job, it is so tucked up on the firewall, we're not going to be able to let you see it on the camera, but I will show it to you out of the car and explain to you how I replaced it. So I'm going to go ahead and just disconnect that the thermal expansion valve, and then I'll show it to you and show you how I pulled it out of there. All right, so we're going to try to show you a little bit better on installing the new one. I'm going to explain it outside of the car here first. This is our old expansion valve. This mounts like against the firewall like so, and the lines bolt to it as one block. And the way this works, the lines have a single Allen head that go through and bolt to there. And once the lines are held onto the expansion valve, the whole assembly then bolts through the lines and the expansion valve to hold it to the firewall. So it's going to end up sitting up in there like this, where you'll have your line block here, and this will be the right on the firewall, right to the evaporator. So we're going to try to show it to you, installing it. I've already got my new O-rings on there, so all we have to do is just go ahead and try installing it. So we'll see if we can get a good camera view of that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and try to get this expansion valve up in here, and make sure it's mounted the right way. And this again sits between this line here and the firewall. Yeah, oh boy, that's tight. All right. You can kind of see it sitting there, I think. And then it's just a matter of lining it all up. And I'm going to get this Allen bolt started right in the center hole. And that just gets snug. And then the two 10mm bolts are what really get tight. Okay. Our expansion valve is in. Our flush is complete. So all we have to do now is to reinstall our new compressor. All right, so now we're going to put our new compressor in there. I've already got my lines, new O-rings on the lines. And it's just going to be a matter of snaking it back up in here. And lining up our holes with the alignment pins and getting our bolts started. I'll go ahead and just get these bolts going here. Okay, now I'll just plug in our electrical connector. Just snaps on. And I'll take off our covers for the ports, put the lines back on. There's one. And two. Now I can go ahead and get the lines back in place. I'll start with the bigger of the two, which is actually the low side. And that will go right up here. So we got our lines attached, our compressor bolted to the motor, and all we have to do now is to put our belt back on. Now luckily our belt stayed in place on the rest of the motor, so all we have to do is get it back onto the compressor here. As I pull down on the tensioner, just like we showed you earlier, taking it off. And I'll just double check that everything's still lined up. And it looks good. All right. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put our splash shields back up. I'll start with this front one here. Once we dropped the car down, we went ahead and hooked up the AC vacuum pump. We've had it running for about an hour and a half now. You can see looking at the pressure gauges here, the vacuum is way down low. It's about 26 bars of mercury down there. So that's plenty low. But yeah, it's been sitting for a long time, so any moisture that might have been left in the system is now gone. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and shut the valves off to the pump. That way I can disconnect the pump. And we're gonna go ahead and connect our refrigerant to it. This car takes 1.5 pounds of refrigerant, or 1.48, but these are 0.75 cans, so it's gonna take 2 cans of refrigerant. So at this point, we can go ahead and charge the system. What we'll do, this is a puncture valve. What you do is you screw it down. My knob is broken, so I'm using my vice grips there. And once you start to back it off is when the pressure will come back through and we can now charge the system. So you'll see on the pressure gauge here, when I open up this low side, it's gonna go ahead and start pumping the Freon into the car. There it goes, filling up. So we'll let it fill here for a second, and then we'll go ahead and start the car and get the compressor running. Now, one thing that's important, you want to make sure you do not open the high side when you're doing this, because if you open the high side and the car is running, it will pump that high pressure refrigerant back into your can, and it can actually blow up your refrigerant can. Luckily, they have a relief built into the bottom of these things, so that if they do blow up, they don't hurt you too bad. I've actually seen it happen before, so just be careful with that. So you can see here the pressures have kind of equalized, so we'll go ahead and start the car. The wipers. All right, so you can see now the low pressure has dropped and the high pressure has started going up. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna let it sit here and draw the refrigerant out of the can here. And you wanna keep the can upwards. It'll take a little while, but you wanna keep the can upwards to make sure you only get the gaseous refrigerant. You don't want the liquid to go into the system while the compressor is running. You can hurt the system that way. So we'll go ahead and let this can fully charge up, and then we're gonna add one more, and then we should be all good. All right, so we're all done. The system has been completely filled up with refrigerant. The AC is nice and cold now. No leaks are visible, so it should be in good shape now. So that is all that there is to replacing the AC compressor and the expansion valve on this 2006 Hyundai Sonata. So we appreciate you watching. Remember, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/apdty, and subscribe to us here on YouTube. We're always trying to put out new videos, and hopefully you'll be able to learn something from them. So thank you for watching. Take care.